Welcome to Point to Rise, your podcast that gives you permission to dream big, take messy action, and turn your talent into profit while turning your back on perfection. My name is Suzanne Purcell, high performance and mindset coach, former international ballerina, profitable entrepreneur, and founder of Point to Rise, a movement designed to empower dancers. It is my mission to use my own story as an inspiration for today's generation of dancers. And now sit back, stretch, warm up, or zip your coffee and love learning how much it matters to point at yourself first to rise to all that you are capable of. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Point to Rise podcast. I am your host, Suzanne, and Natalie Orr is our guest today. I have met Natalie over Instagram, and we have connected in a way I don't get to connect with many people. Natalie is a certified life coach and dance teacher with a master's in dance anthropology. She believes in dance for all and in empowering people to live life on their terms. She is half Scottish and half Cypriot. Natalie now lives in Madrid, Spain, with her husband and 2 cats and runs her own soul-centered business. Without any further ado, please enjoy this conversation. I know there will be takeaways that you can either write down or share on Instagram, or even write us a review and tag us when you post it. Well, here we go. Here's Natalie. Natalie, welcome to the show. I am so grateful that you're here. So you and I really casually met on Instagram, the power of the gram, I'm telling you.
Yes.
And our first conversation was so beautiful and so powerful that there was just no other way than having you here on the Point to Rise podcast. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. It's my absolute pleasure. I'm just such a big fan of all the work you're doing, of the change maker that you are. And I feel privileged to be able to sit here with you and have this conversation.
Oh, thank you, my love. So without any deep diving into your past, I really want to talk about where you are at right now, and perhaps also what's your dream, what's your vision, where you want to go. What we talked about earlier was, what are we actually going to bring to this table? Like, how can we offer value? And I think that you becoming a certified life coach and teaching dance in a studio sets you apart so greatly. And I want to talk about a little bit of the difference that you're feeling, because you found your way back to dancing in your adult years, from having it in the beginning of your life and completely stopping it and going a completely other route. Now you're finding your way back here. Let's dive into the why first. Why are you back here? Why are you back in the studio?
Yes. Okay. So that is my ballet story, where I stopped ballet at 9, and then really I properly came back to training in ballet when I was 25, and I'm 33 now. And so that ballet story was a very, very intense one. And in the in-between, I never stopped dancing. So I was doing contemporary, I was doing Latin stuff, but certainly the ballet, there was a, however long that is, 15, 16 year gap of without really focusing on it. And so the power of coming back into the ballet studio now, it feels like completing the full circle for me, as if there was still something that I had to prove to myself. And I realized that it was I had to still prove something to myself. And I don't necessarily think that people have to do that. If you can acknowledge prior to what I did that there's something that you're needing to prove to yourself, you can go and do it. But what I've found now, that I just decided, even that was a decision that I was just like, okay, I've done it, I'm going to tick that box. And that was a decision that I made, because I could have spent the rest of my life being like, well, I never got to be as good a ballet dancer as I wanted to be. I could have done that, but I decided I was going to tick the box of like ballet dancing, good enough. Okay. And that's what's allowed me to, I think, become the type of teacher that I am now. And my ability to tick that box in ballet was through my understanding of life coaching. This understanding that instead of chasing perfection and the end result, that we focus on the process, that we bring joy into the process rather than thinking that joy comes as a reward from achieving what I set out to do.
I'm dropping the mic right now because that is such a, let's dive in there, because it is the opposite to the story that we have been taught in our training. Yeah. Right. And it is not only, let's say, in the dance world, but when I look in the entrepreneurial world, there is a little bit used to be this belief that you only can achieve success if you work 20 hours a day and just operate in a burnout and really ravel yourself in that male energy of go, 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 go. Right. And we're now finding out as a collective that that's actually not really the truth anymore, that there is way more in the journey. There's way more, I think, satisfaction and joy to be found in the small things and the celebration. It doesn't mean that we're not working hard. We're just looking at it in a more productive way, right? So how did you get there? Because that's a long way. That is a way of, oh my gosh, I have this story here that is centered in my subconscious that really determines and dictates 95% of my thoughts and behaviors. So how am I going to change that? So what was the, how do you say the word? What was the initiation of that?
I've actually never stopped to kind of look for that pivotal moment, and I'm sure there've been a few, but certainly the big one that allowed me to get here was when I started to question the stories that I had about myself, the stories that I'd been told about myself from the world, myself as a woman, myself as a dancer, using that label. What does that even mean? The story, the one that you just mentioned, Suzanne, of the story of hard work. If not, then who are you? What are you? Do we even need you? And it started very small. I started just with the questions really of like, are my thoughts always true? Can I really, trust that they're serving me to the best of my ability? And then the stories, and then I was able to start questioning, the more societal stories, the more cultural stories, the bigger stories that are more scary to address in some ways, because then you realize the matrix that we live in and the lies that we take to be truth, because it's not because we're lazy or silly or anything, but because it's extremely scary and rebellious to question those stories. And I think that personal journey has, for me, the macro is always the micro and the micro is the macro. And my two favorite things to do are to zoom right out to like universal level and then to zoom right into the subjective. There are people who are really good in the more like, let's say, national space or kind of societal space of like community space, but I really love the going right in and then the right out, because they're always a mirror to each other. And so this was one of the things that I realized of like, okay, well, my stories about myself as a dancer and what that has to entail were reflected in the wider story of just like, what is a dancer? What does it mean to be a dancer? What does it mean to be successful as a dancer? And as you said, Suzanne, having this masculine energy driving that. And I've always been driven by my I mean, maybe not always, probably as a little girl I wasn't, but certainly coming into the space of it's the hard work and the grind or whatever that is going to set me apart. And it's not to take that away. That is a part of it. But what about the energy that I bring to something? Is that not as valuable as the hours that I've put into doing the thing without conscious presence or without, an intention? And so I started to realize, and the only way I think for individuals, us as individuals, to be able to unravel these stories is to start testing new hypotheses. those are the stories that we create for ourselves. And we decide, you know what, I'm going to test this. I'm going to see if there is a different way, because usually we only have evidence of one way of doing things. And it's the way that we were just given. And we're almost given like a linear pathway. Like, okay, to be a dancer, you need to go to this place, you need to dance this many hours, you need to then graduate and go to this school or whatever else. And this works for anything. Like lawyer, you need to go to this school and then this law firm. You know, it's really in anything, these kind of laid out career paths. And then you have many more choices also than just two. But just to break it down into two for a moment, it doesn't even mean that you start to stray from the path necessarily. You can, and I've done that, but you could even continue on the path, but just approach it in a totally different way. And I think that's what we forget. We think like when we look at people from the outside and they're doing similar things, that it feels the same for them on the inside, and they're coming at it with a similar energy. And just kind of looking on World Ballet Day is one of my favorite times to like look at the dancers and look how they are in between the exercises. Look how they're speaking to the other members of the company. Look how they're caring for themselves in the in-between times. I absolutely love doing this. I'm such a weirdo. I'm there for the dancing as well, obviously, but I just love watching the dancers. And even there, you can see that success of gaining principal in whatever company or whatever doesn't mean they're all enjoying it the same amount. It doesn't mean that they're all coming from that same place of, you know, freedom of expression or from joy or from really taking care of themselves. You know, there's a lot of other stuff that's going on there, and that is just one example, but that is true for all of us. It just obviously looks different. So I think when I started to really realize that, wow, I actually have a choice. For me, it was this thing in ballet. I actually have a choice of how I am inside my body while I dance. This was true in life as well. And I realized that how ironic that as someone who identifies as a dancer, who's, you know, danced all my life in whatever different ways, that I was disconnected from my body in the way of not being present in my body, but rather using my body as like a tool for manipulation, a tool to make these shapes, to do these movements without being connected, without being present, without being caring, and instead being like to my body, I need you to do this. You do this for me. I'm not giving you anything back, by the way. This is just what I expect of you. And so when I realized that actually there's a way to connect, and this is a lot of the mindset stuff, which is why I feel like dance is a wonderful tool and the mindset stuff is a wonderful tool, and these two can come together. So you have, I don't like dividing the mind and body into two things, because they're of course always connected, but it's helpful just to have that language. But realizing that there were stories that weren't letting me go into my body. The stories where if you do that, you might make a mistake and look silly. If you stop focusing on the image in the mirror and start paying attention on the inside, you might feel more pain. So many things. You might start judging yourself. You might, whatever it is. And so this work is always a double work. It's the work on the mental side of things, and it's the work in like the internal presence embodiment while we dance, while we just live our day-to-day lives, while we have a conversation with someone, while we eat, all these things.
It's how you do the little things is how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? And I feel that we in the industry have forgotten about that kind of approach, that well, you have to be you are going to be an athlete and a high performer and an artist in the studio, and what you do outside of the studio really doesn't matter, because you have to be a dancer. In order to get there, you have to do this. But we're not teaching on what other steps you can actually take to support yourself, not to run you dry.
Yeah.
And that's where I feel the shift really can happen, and it can happen quickly, and where everybody can lean into. So you're not a traitor for taking care of yourself. You're not a traitor for questioning the system. And that all can come from a very loving place. It does not have to be aggressive. If it is met with aggression, that is not on you. that's on the other person. And then you also know that that person is not somebody you should be around with, because if they are actually open to having a conversation, then you perhaps will either find different perspectives, or they actually will be seeing that you have made some progress that they haven't made yet. So I find it so easy. So when we're talking about it and just, you know, really unpacking all the layers where everything is coming from, and what it really comes down to every single time I have a conversation about this is worthiness, that we as people find worth in taking care of ourselves, that we find worth in ourselves to be, you know, standing in the spotlight. So many dancers particularly are not afraid of the failure. They're actually afraid of shining as bright as they can, because somewhere, somewhat, somehow, someone has once told them you are too much. And even though you want to be in the spotlight and you want to be professional, you want to shine bright, you are so afraid of your own capabilities, because you either think people may judge you, or you may also could think, well, maybe I'm not capable.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
absolutely.
When did you start training for life coaching, and how did you find that? Why did you get into that?
Yeah, so the first whole section was just me doing the stuff. I wasn't even thinking about training in life coaching. It was really a few years of just, you know, wow, okay, I listened to this interview, or I read this book, or I listened to this podcast, and like I said before about the kind of experimentation with my own stories, was like, this stuff really works. And then, like, I consider myself a bit of a learning addict. I just really enjoy it. And I think as human beings, we usually do, if we're able to stay curious, that I was like, if this is working, I'm into it. I want more. And so that was really how it started. And I saw the power. I'm someone who likes to implement things quite quickly. I think probably as dancers, everyone can relate to that. As soon as you get a correction, you try and implement it. That's kind of the same as how I approach life coaching. And not everything sticks and not everything is for you, but I'm also willing to go through that process of it not being extremely efficient, because really the best things are not efficient. They're actually inefficient and sometimes messy and uncomfortable and all of those things. And so that was the process really for me. And I started to see, you know, not only in the dance studio and having this more freedom to not judge myself and be more in the, you know, in the music and all of these things. And then at the same time, I was seeing it in my relationship with my fiance, that I was, you know, giving him more space to be himself. I was trying to control less, just as I was trying to control my own movements and impulses less. I was trying to control him less. And then I actually started to be like, and what happens if I start to trust the universe? And I know that sounds like a really big, like more into spirituality thing, but I played with that question a bit. And at first I was just like, it was only in my mind that I would play with it. And I was like, imagine, you know, what that. And then I started to actually do it. And there would be moments where I would usually know that I would make a certain decision. And I said, I'm just going to wait, or I'm going to ask for some kind of guidance. Either I'll speak to a friend who knows more about it. I used to rely so heavily on myself and think I had to come up with all the answers and I had to do everything by myself. And I was like, so what happens if I actually just start to trust? And then I saw the power of that. And so it was all of these things, one after the other, slowly. And it's never, you know, linear. It was up and down and here and there. But I was like, this is so powerful. And I know through being a dance teacher that when you teach something, you understand it much more deeply yourself. And so I did life coaching certificates without even fully deciding that I was going to be a life coach. I did them because I was just really curious of like, how can I go deeper into this, and how can I understand it from a way of like, if I were going to teach it, what depth of knowledge would I need to know for that? And so that's actually how I kind of got into it. And then from there, I started doing just like some free sessions for friends who run communities here in Madrid. And then I immediately was getting clients, which I didn't expect. And that all just kind of came in a roll, which was wonderful. And again, there's what happens when you stop trying to control and you let the universe take over. And then lockdown happened. And I may have told this story in your Facebook Live, so apologies to anyone who has listened to that as well. But lockdown happened, and that was the moment when the control started to come back in again. And I started to doubt myself, and I was like, who do I think I am? You know, like I trained in dance for so many years, and then I finally allowed myself to teach it. And like all of a sudden, I've only done a few years of work myself in, you know, life coaching. And all of a sudden now I think I can share this with other people, even though no one that I'd worked with was saying like, you're not good at this. But it was just that pause and that moment of like, I'm not sure. And, you know, this is why I said it's never a linear journey. I've done all that work on, you know, limiting beliefs and stories and all of that, but still there's always stuff lurking under the surface. And so I stopped then for a while. And I actually focused a lot more on online ballet during lockdown, which was, you know, a beautiful thing that I had access to, and I got to meet people from all over the world, and it was wonderful. But the calling for life coaching was so strong, and I'm back. It wasn't even like the full lockdown, it was just mainly the beginning part. So I'm back coaching now, and I did, you know, a full program for people who dance, not professional dancers, although everyone's welcome, but for adult dancers. And that's like life coaching for people who dance, and I do one-to-one coaching. And what I've realized, like I said, I think before, is that these two tools are so complementary. And I didn't understand that at the beginning. I was like, there's dance over here and there's coaching over here, not really being particularly aware, I think, of how much the coaching was actually like infusing into the dance in such a beautiful way. I wasn't fully aware of it at the beginning. It's kind of looking back now, I can see how that journey has happened. And then at the same time, all the bodily knowledge from dance, and having studied it in dance anthropology, looking at it not from a performance context, but from a behavioral context that says all human beings were born to dance if they want to. And all you have to do is look at any kid when there's music playing, and you see that dance is in all of us. And so taking these two things, movement as a tool and coaching as a tool, and now I'm at the point where I'm like, and how more do I bring these two things together and provide people with more tools, the tools that I have, the tools that I've been able to use that I'm so grateful for, and how can I just share and spread these tools to as many people as would like them?
You know, I thank you for sharing that. I think that we underestimate what it really takes to become a dancer, professional, you know, in a professional setting where there's lots of pressure. We underestimate what the training can actually do to the younger generation, and how much we're actually taking over into adult life, and how much actually hinders us to become who we really want to be because of the way it is being taught at the moment. The beauty is that, or I think not the beauty, but where the opportunity lies, is that we're actually starting to look outside of the ballet world and understanding that dance isn't just a singular lane, that it takes so many other aspects and avenues and little side streets that come in. You know, a tendu is not only just put your foot out and put it back in. There's so many other little variances and how every muscle is supposed to work. Let's apply that to the wholeness of a dancer, and let's look at really what it takes, and perhaps also not look at it only from a scientific perspective, but from a psychological perspective, and from a humanitarian. Oh my gosh, that is such a hard word. As a human being, there we go. From that perspective, and how can we create that new version of a dancer? Like, what could that look like? We've done up until this point the old model, and we know where we're at. We're seeing we have more and more abuse trials coming up by the month now, because so many people are hurt, and everything they know is how to hurt other people. They don't know how to share love because they don't have that love in themselves, like very plainly put, right? I mean, it relates into many other avenues in life. But like, if we were opening up the possibilities for dancers more, I think we would see less of the abuse and the sad stories and the people that stop, that perhaps could have become the version of them that they really wanted to be when they were 4 years old, versus giving up at 20 and being heartbroken and don't even know how to refill their cup and how to heal that wound, right? And I think that putting life coaching and training together is a must. Like psychology, like basic psychology is for everyone. You don't have to have a doctor's degree. It will only assist you in your journey towards who you want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is on so many levels. So on the one hand, you know, in this environment, in any environment where you have a power structure, in any environment, and obviously it's very obvious within the structure of a company or even within a class where, and this depends on the teacher, but if the teacher is very much, you know, I'm in this position and you are all here, and, you know, the older I get, the more I'm also like, I'm cool with everyone doing different things. I'm not saying that what I'm about to share and how I do things is the right way. I don't believe it is. It's just the right way for me, and it's the right way for people who want to attend my class. If other people are finding that way is the old way is working with them, then, you know, that option is, I'm not saying that option has to disappear. What I would love is for there to be different options available to people, and then people get to choose, safe in the knowledge that the end result is, in terms of, if we're talking about dance here, like the dancer that you see on stage is going to be of equal quality regardless of the avenue that they went to get there. And hopefully when they come off that stage, they are, you know, this whole and fulfilled and at peace person, without, you know, because I think that certainly for me there was a fear around what happens if I step away from the idea that I'm not enough. What happens then? Do I get lazy? Do I stop working? What happens when I give myself permission to be, just to accept the dancer that I am today while still wanting to be better tomorrow? What's the driver if it's not, Natalie, you're just not good enough yet, or like, come on, or like, there's so much more to do, like that energy. And I realized that what it is joy. and I was like, wait, I knew that as a kid, and then somewhere along the way I was like, oh, joy is not the thing that gets you to where you want to go. It's hard work. Instead of being like, those two things can go together, and it doesn't have to be that you do these things out of fear of not being enough, or this drive of like not being enough, or even to take the other example that you said, this fear of being so good that actually what is that going to do to the people around you, and somehow you're still supposed to keep yourself small. It's still fear. So whether it's not enough or actually just so amazing that you would dazzle, that coming from joy instead of fear is another path, but it comes with a warning. And the warning is this for me, is that you might discover that when you start to tune into joy, that the path that you're on is not the one that you want to be on. Mm-hmm. And that's incredibly terrifying for people who have only had like one identity, say, and they've only ever done one thing. And I understand that. And so, you know, I don't want to just say this and then leave it there. This is the real warning, and it's what happened to me, which is I understand now that my path must include coaching. It must include these bigger things that I love talking about, that light me up, and dance will always be part of my story. But in being able to let that go partly while still holding it in a sacred place and expanding into all of this that I really am supposed to be doing, and I'm getting goosebumps saying this, which is a sign that it's the right thing, is that once I stepped into joy in dance and I allow myself to live dance from that place, I actually realized that everything that I already had was enough. And that actually the joy, there was even more joy over here to be had in sharing these other things with people in a different way, and still bringing that embodied dancer to all of those things. And so that's the thing about the leap of faith, to believe that there is another way to get to where you want to go. And that way is joy, and not always joy, because that also sounds, so cliche and all that. Of course, there will be moments of, you'll be disheartened, you might be hurt, you might be disappointed. Of course. But the bottom layer is that of, I do this thing because I love it, and because in some way it serves me and it serves others. And so, dancers provide this amazing thing that we all need, which is more beauty in the world. And there's so much more to it than that, but people underestimate that. They underestimate it so much. We also create, that's performance. And then of course, like if you're a teacher or you're in the studio, you're working with dancers, in a group, then of course there's community, there's all these other things. But there's no way to downplay the fact that we need beauty in the world, and we need things that cross language barriers, that cross political barriers, that cross any kind of barriers. There are so many barriers right now, and we need more of those things. And so if that is the way that in your heart, I'm supposed to serve the world, then you go for it. And I realized that wasn't mine. My way of serving the world wasn't through creating more beauty. My way of serving the world was supposed to be more in community, like smaller communities, and having different conversations. And once I realized that, I was like, wow. And that's also my dance journey. I'm also supposed to be teaching, and I'm supposed to be creating experiences for people to find other aspects of themselves through movement. And of course, at the beginning, my head was like, well, that means you're not a dancer then. Well, that means you failed. Well, that means this. Well, that means that. And like slowly, I've just stepped into the power of it. And I've let go of the stories that I failed and I'm not good enough. And this is all like a big, you don't count as a dancer anymore, etc.
I think it's this belief and that teaching is that you can only rise to success when you fully committed. But fully committed doesn't mean that you can't do anything else, that you have to separate yourself from yourself. It doesn't mean that you have to betray yourself. You can be multi-passionate. In fact, I would highly encourage you to lean into your multi-passionate nature, because most dancers are so creative. And once you open, you take the little plug out that tells you can only be that one version of yourself, you won't be able to stop that flow. And that's a beautiful thing. Now, how to manage that, that's a completely different story, and I'm still working on it. However, is finding that joy. And how do we say in business, don't put all of your eggs in one bucket. Like, even though that might be the teaching, but it's not a sustainable way.
Mm-hmm.
It is not. It's not in business, and it's not in the arts. You have to have your eggs in at least 3 or 4. And that means, you grow as a human being too. Okay, let's pivot just a wee bit. I want our listeners to take away a few tools that they perhaps can implement if they saying, yes, I'm ready to implement more joy into my career, into my life, into my relationships. So for somebody that has been, working really hard and find their identity in work mostly, me, or used to, what would you say could be the first maybe 3 steps to maybe lay in on a daily basis to move towards? I really want to hone in here that this is a journey. This is not something you pay for and you get it. It's not something you order on Amazon. This is not something that will come to you overnight. It's a process, and it starts for me with asking different questions. So, but I want to hear your insight.
Yes. Okay. I'm having a kind of 4 answer thing. So 2 mindset tools and 2 embodiment tools.
Okay, go for it.
How do I start to come more into my joy? So the first question is this, and this is one, if you're a person who enjoys writing, I really highly suggest journaling on this. If you're not someone who particularly enjoys journaling, find a friend and talk about this question, which is, why do I think I have to earn joy? Why do I think I have to earn joy? Why does the work come first and the joy come second? Why can it not be that I start with joy and bring that to what I want to do? Is it because of things? Yeah.
Can I want to answer the question. That's what I want to do, because it definitely brought something up for me. So for me, it's because that was laid in my childhood already. Weren't we all taught in one way or another to, okay, in order to be seen, heard, and loved, you need to, enroll into 1st grade, have all A's, go to college, graduate from college, go to university. And our identity is so wrapped around our achievements, as in papers and titles, versus who we are as a human being and what our emotional intelligence level is at.
Yeah.
So that's just me.
Absolutely. Mine is similar.
For yourself.
Yes, mine is similar. And it was this, when I got introduced to the idea of doing versus being, I just didn't understand it at first for the longest time, because I was like, well, what do you mean being? Because if I'm not doing anything, then I'm either asleep or, so what is this whole concept of being? And basically that is the seat of joy, is just like, we are alive. Do you know the chances of all of us right this very second being on this spinning, orb in the sky?
Yeah.
It's just, and that is joyful enough, but we're so disconnected from that because there's so many other things going on. And again, I know this sounds really like cliche in a way and all these things, but is really the truth when we start to peel off the layers? Unless you're in physical pain, or you're in that moment being the victim of something, which most of the time we're not, then what is wrong? And I use this is the second question that I was going to ask. So that's the first one. Why do I think I have to earn joy? And the second one is, what is wrong with this moment? And it's such a basic question, but really when it comes down to it is what I was just saying then, which is that so much of the time we're in our head and we're telling stories. And even when we're dancing, we're telling stories about what we're doing and what we should be doing and what we're not doing yet, or what that other person's doing just in front of me, and she just did a triple and I just did a double, whatever. We're so much in here that we don't get to just accept the moment for what it is. And we're always wishing the moment was different to what it is. And even we can think about this with waiting. If we even, I don't know about other people, but I certainly I noticed myself doing this in different moments of lockdown, where I was like, well, whatever, I'm just going to sit here, not enjoy, because I can't go outside right now and I can't see my friends and I can't do this and I can't do that. And I'm going to sit here and just be like, well, I'll just wait until I can be happy, instead of asking myself that question, what is wrong with this moment right now?
Or what can I do right now to feel better? Right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Am I changed to hit? Yeah. So it's such a simple question, but it's such a powerful question. When I see myself starting to move away from, gratitude, and it doesn't always have to be joy, just peacefulness, just that kind of base layer of just like, I'm okay. Things are okay. right now in my little energy bubble.
Do you know the saying, and I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, please.
I want to get this in because I have been that ungrateful person.
Me too.
As a dancer, I expected the world. But did I ever pay the universe back, or even in my energy output? No, I came always from a place of lack, meaning from a place with what was wrong with this moment. And I could tell you a million things that were wrong with this moment. And I never could tell you, even perhaps hearing the question, well, what is going right now? What is going the right way? What are you grateful for?
Mm-hmm.
I would have not been able to answer that question because I was just not white. I wasn't thinking that way.
Yeah.
And I wasn't thinking that way because I had no level of awareness. Like I was in the bottom Chesapeake with the awareness. So what we focus on truly expands. And if you focus on all the things that are not going right and all the things that you not have or can't do, you will get more of that. It's not only a universal law, it is what we're putting out always will come back to us. And this is why daily gratitude will come in it is so important. And it may seem so wooey, but this is how you train yourself. Literally train your brain, which is the biggest muscle, to course correct really quickly when you're not in a good spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you said about, the universe not responding. The thing is, I think the universe doesn't really respond to hard work, and we think like we've earned something from like good things should be coming to me because I've worked really, really hard. Mother Nature she's a hard worker in some ways, but she's incredibly creative and patient and just wise in terms of the when and the how and the why. And Mother Nature doesn't respond to relentless pushing.
No.
It goes against, in fact, renewal, nourishment, the seasons, all the things that we need to stay in balance, to stay in harmony. And of course, she's not going to respond to just this energy of like moving forward and there's not enough. So as you said, like when we can take the time to be grateful and to notice the abundance that we already have around us, then more of that comes in. Or even if, some people find that one harder to believe, but it's like, well, even if more doesn't come in, even just noticing that stuff is already there, the stuff that is, that's still going to put you in a better place, even if you're not into the whole manifestation thing and stuff, which I am into, but I know that can be a stretch for some people at the beginning. So those are like the two kind of questions I would invite people to explore. And then there are two practices that I just love for the embodiment stuff, because at the end of the day, any emotion is always embodied. So just to do like a very brief how I like to break this down. So thoughts are not embodied until they become emotions, but all these things are linked. So thoughts are linked to emotions. Emotions always have bodily sensations. So you can think, just for yourself, well, how are you feeling when you're say very energized and happy? Like your heart's beating faster, you might have like a warm sensation, you might even have like pleasurable sensations in your skin. When you're very sad, or like when you're sad or grieving, you might have a heaviness in your chest. When you're sleepy, you might start to feel heavy. These are all they all have physical sensations as well, the emotions. And so when we get to connect to our body, we get to feel more joy. There might even have been joyful thoughts there, but they didn't make it down into the body because we weren't connected to the body. And so being able to come in and tune into the body is such a powerful thing. And these are two things that I really like to do. So the first one is a body scan. And this is going to sound, again, really basic, but usually it's the basic ones that work for more people. And so the body scan it's just going through, and I do this sometimes before I go to sleep, and sometimes I do it during the day just to check where I'm holding tension. And so I just like to start like with my forehead and my face, and I'll just check that I'm not like crunching anything up. And then for me, I always hold tension in my traps, and so I just remember to soften, and then all the way down through your body. You just go through the parts of the body. And for me, I hold so much tension in my womb space, so like the lower abdominal muscles. And in a way, it's understandable, because as dancers, like, we're always told, hold that, hold the pelvic floor, da, 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 da. Yeah. And if you forget to release that is a lot of tension on your body. And if you think about like what I was saying before about, you know, sometimes that pressure that we feel, so sometimes we are almost faking some negative emotions by holding so much tension in our body instead of releasing and being soft and being open. And so that has been such a huge one for me, because I held so much tension in my hips and my pelvis. So I always make sure that I focus there. Even if I don't have time to do a full body scan, I check my shoulders and I check my my womb space, and then I'm like, okay, well, I'm relaxed, more relaxed than I was before. So just as simple as that, and you'll get to know your body really well. So for some people it might be back, for other people it might be like the thighs, just wherever. You'll start to notice where you tend to hold more tension in your body, and that just allows, and again, this is going to sound very woo-woo, but just the energy connection, then, that it's not staying here. It's able to flow up and down. There's softness and there's engagement and there's disengagement, which is so important, just to have that space. So that's another one that I love. And then this final one it's more personal. So this won't work for everyone. In fact, none of these will necessarily work for everyone. It's just an offering if you want to try it. But this one for me was the one that really allowed me to find more joy in the dance studio, which was this. And I was so resistant to doing it at the beginning, because I was like, this is so stupid. Why am I, as someone who already identifies as a dancer, going to put on one song in the morning and force myself to dance to it, not in front of the mirror, not doing the moves that I would usually do in the club to like impress the guys or like have a laugh with my friends, but just to allow whatever movement wants to come out of my body to come out without caring at all what it looks like. And this was I swear to God, Suzanne, it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do movement wise, because I just want to know what is the correct movement, what's the right way to do it, how is it supposed to look, what muscles do I need to engage to get there, etc. And like, I did improv during my degree when I studied contemporary dance, so like, it's not that I haven't done improv, but even in there's some vocabulary, you have a goal, there's kind of, you know, it's a different thing. And then all of a sudden I was like, wow. And it was so uncomfortable the first few times I did it, but I committed to doing it. I said, I'm going to do it for at least a week. I ended up doing it for, I think, probably 2 or 3 months, just as a practice. I've kind of let it go now, because I see that it's transferred into more of my dancing in other places. But at the first few times I was really like, this doesn't feel good. And I see people talking about doing this, and they would people who weren't necessarily dance teachers or professional dancers. These were just, I guess, just people who enjoyed dancing, and they were like, this is one of my parts of my morning routine, put on a song that I love and just dance to it and let whatever comes out come out. And I think, if I'm really honest with myself, because of being judged for my dancing, I judged other people for their dancing, and I would, you know, see people not doing stuff as that well and judge them, instead of being like, that's their journey, they're allowed to do that. Dance doesn't have to look like this. Dance can be whatever it is. And yes, if you want to be on a stage, then it does need to look more like this. And yes, if you want to teach, it does need to look something like this. But all of these things can exist at the same time. And I think I was so attached to this identity that I wouldn't let myself even go there, because I was judgmental of it. And so, yeah, when I first started doing this, I was like, this feels so uncomfortable. I feel so stupid. Thank God no one can see me apart from the cats right now. But as I did it more, I kind of got into it, and I let myself go, and it was very healing, which sounds so simple, but it really healed that. I think I had a wound that was really about looking silly or getting something wrong. Those are probably 2 of my biggest fears at school: looking silly or getting something wrong, making a big mistake, and like people noticing. So yeah. If anyone wants to take that, I highly recommend it, but just agree with yourself to commit to it for a few days, because the first one might not be that fun.
Man, I can so relate to this. The whole free flowing dancing, letting go of control and
Yeah.
of somebody else telling me what to do, and really just feeling versus doing. I think that would have been such a great lesson. I mean, we were encouraged to let go, but as a
Yes.
20-year-old, I'm sorry, I'm not going to make a fool out of myself, because that was the belief, right? Like, I didn't even know what that meant, let go, just be like a kid again. I was like, I don't remember what it was like, because I stopped being a kid when I was, 7 or 8. So help me out here. What does that really mean? And we forget how important that skill is to, let's say, show up as a playful Juliet or Giselle, or even as a white swan, or in some very modern new work, as the playful, free, and joyful person, that if we don't know what that feels like, we can't tap into that just because we watch Carva or, Sylvie Guillem do it. It needs to come from a different place, not from a place where we're imitating, but where we're feeling. And we're not, right? And we're not paying attention to that. And I also want to remark the whole scanning your body, where you're holding your energy, because yes, when you dance, when you train, when you rehearse, you engage everything in your body. And we're not understanding that we're holding energy in these places, and our entire flow is being interrupted. Like, we're not in alignment anymore. And really asking yourself the questions, am I aligned right now? Are even my habits, what I'm doing, what I'm feeling, is it aligned to where I want to go? And that is important stuff. And we're not leaning into those important things. I feel like, do you know the book Atomic Habits? It's
I read it.
Favorite books. And how he describes how the English national bicycle team hired the habit coach, and how they started like from 30,000 foot up here, all the way to what color the bike storage room had, to see what kind of dust settled on the bikes, in order to really make them the fastest that they can be. And all of these tools that we just described right now and talked about, and perspectives even, are part of the specs on your body. It is not to hinder you, but these are things that will actually improve your ability to be an artist, not only an athlete, but also an artist. I mean, if we're looking at athletes, they have so many more coaches. Like, there is so much more science behind in how they approach their training, their mindset, and how they work up to the games, and.
And they have seasons where there's like downtime and like rest is built in, and all. It's really interesting that there isn't more crossover there, communication between like sports psychology and it's happening, but it's slow.
Oh, good. It's happening, because I haven't seen any yet.
I think it's slowly happening. I think the Australian ballets and the Royal Ballet have started to implement some of those things, and I know they're doing other type of training that's not ballet, like they encourage the dancers to do cross training, things like that. So I think there's more coming in, but I guess there's still a lot more room for improvement.
And I think it's understanding that it does not be like this extra training, let's say cross training or whatever Olympic athletes also do. This does not have to be on top of what you're already doing, because that's overwhelming. It can be instead, right? You don't need to do a class.
In fact,
it should be. You should not be doing your 8 hours and then go to the gym and then take a Pilates class and then do this. No. If you do all of the other things, your time in the studio will be cut in half. I swear to God, I am so convinced. So many studies out there that's actually possible, which then on the other hand will really prevent injuries. It will prevent only building like certain muscle groups, when you get in the
Yeah.
studio and you start rehearsing for another ballet and you all of a sudden sore for the first week of rehearsing that, it is a clear indicator that we're not using all of the muscle groups at the same time. This is why some ballets give you more injuries than others, or works. And that's why this extra training really truly needs to happen, because as a dancer, you train your outer muscle groups, and you're not really training like everything that supports and what's underneath. And it is so important to really lean into it and not do it extra, but instead.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Can I add one thing to this beautiful thing that you said before about the letting go, when you were talking about that even people had asked you to do that in the studio, and same thing for me, you know, that moment where your teacher's like, okay, and now dance it, and you're like, I swear I was just dancing it. Or this thing like, you know, like, and now really feel the music, and I was like, I was listening to the music when I just did that then, and I realized now, like, looking back on this journey, that it was because they ask for that, but they don't create the safe environment to do it necessarily, especially not for people who, you know, like I just said there, maybe more wary of like looking really silly in front of other people. And there are people who that's not the case for, and they're the class clown that everybody loves them, and they will do the silly thing and people will laugh and love them, but that was never me. It's the opposite. And so there's that moment where it's like, and we've created this environment where we want as close to perfection as possible in class, and then there comes this other moment where we're going to ask you to now play with that and allow yourself to make a mistake, when the whole of the 99% of the time we don't want that. And all of a sudden to think that like everybody's going to be able to switch that on. Some people can, but I couldn't. And so there was something about the environment that just wasn't clicking there. And I love what you said about coming back to being a kid, or that they'd said, you know, like, it's like being a kid again. It's like, yeah, but I've got all this adult conditioning on top of that now, and you want me to just take all of that off in a split second? It's not as simple as that, right? And it's well intentioned. I understand it's well intentioned, and they want the best for us, and they want us to be in that joy while we're dancing, but it's not that easy to just ask for it.
And it's also perhaps opening the door one time is not really sufficing all the other 99 times that door is actually closed. You cannot letting go just turn on. You cannot feel safe by a light switch. Like it's just not happening. This is human nature. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think it starts in class. You know, when we say class is a place for dancers to find their body and like really have this conversation going on. I never felt safe in class. I mean, I always felt judged, and I always was told what not to do. I think that's where we need to really dive into and apply more, well, the learnings and the studies and the knowledge that's out there, and carry it over and say, hey, let's just give it a try. Why don't we just play Brilliant Idea Time? What if? And let's ask the question, what if it would look like this? In all my conversations, I hear so much, but how, Susie? How is it possible? Like, how can we recreate the arts? I'm like, I am not talking to you from this kind of perspective. I am not even sharing with you my ideas, because you are not believing in that it's possible yet.
Mm-hmm.
Once you're able to ask, well, what if it would be actually fun? What if it could be joyful? What if we would change all of these stories and identify where we actually have held ourselves back? Once you're at that point, once you're that open, then I will have the conversation. Before that, it's a waste of my time.
Yeah. 100%. You have to be committed. Yeah. If people aren't, you don't have to be fully convinced of the vision, but you have to have the belief that it's possible, and be able to, if you can't envision it for yourself, like, share the vision of someone who has it, rather than being like, yeah, okay, well, you just do that then. you know,
And
it's like, no,
show me first before I, show me
Yes.
the proof first.
yeah,
And then I'll jump on the wagon.
that's
Yeah,
not how it works.
Not on my wagon, darling. Listen, where can everybody find you and follow you, and what kind of offerings do you have right now?
Yes, so I am, the best place is Instagram. I'm on YouTube as well, but I prefer Instagram because I can connect with people easier there, like private messages and stuff. So I'm still split in two at the moment. So coaching Natalie is Natalie Orr, that's my last name, ORR.co. And then the dance stuff it's all ballet actually at the moment, on Natalie Dancer, dance with a Z. And those are the same channels on YouTube as well, but I prefer that people come and say hi on Instagram, because then I get to see you guys and talk to you. And well, at the moment, I made the decision to stop all of my online dance classes because I was just called to be in the studio with my lovely community of dancers here in Madrid. And so that's where I'm focusing for the rest of this year. I'm planning on doing another Adult Ballet Holiday in 2022, and that's obviously like everybody's welcome to come from around the world. The last one we had people from Sweden, from Canada, from the US, from Italy, like from all over the place, which is wonderful. Wow. It's such a fun experience. And so that's kind of the dance stuff. And then for the coaching stuff, I do one-to-one coaching, and I'm also just getting ready to launch my program that I did in the spring. We're doing a fall edition, and that, as I said before, it's for dancers, not necessarily professional, although as I said, everybody's welcome. But it's a coaching program, life coaching program for people who are connected to their bodies in like this different way, and people who dance. It's so interesting because we do have things in common and ways of approaching things in this like tenacity. And so there are certain things that we all share, and it's really fun to get people together in like a small community and go through that coaching journey together. And people just have this very special awareness as well from being in a dance studio that I find it's easy to pull out things in the coaching world. So I really enjoy that program, and I'm looking forward to doing it again in the fall. And that's it.
Wow. Well, thank you, Natalie. This was such
Thank you so much.
Beautiful conversation. Definitely filled my cup. It is so good to connect with like-minded people. It's where I most get my energy from and fill my cup from. So thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you for stepping first and going through the slump and coming dirty and wash yourself off afterwards. and doing it over and over again. So thank you for being here, and I'm sending you so much love. I know this episode will air once Natalie is already married, but she's getting married in 10 days. You were listening to it that she already has the ring on the finger. But what would be really sweet if you're listening to this, send her a congratulation message and just share one takeaway from this episode with your audience. And this is how you can support us. That's one way. And another way would be that you write a review for the Point to Rise podcast, give us a 5-star review, and share this episode with one person that you think could really, really benefit from it. So there you have it, you all. You know this feel. We're sending you so much love, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening. If this message resonates with you, please pass it on to someone who needs to hear this right now. And if you like what you've heard, your feedback will go a very long way. If you just take 30 seconds and leave me a 5-star review, that would mean the world to me. Till next time, point at yourself to rise to all that you are capable of.